And so there's that sort of gray area that everybody has to go through, and it's really about experience. You can prove what's going on up to a certain point. You can see certain things in the physical universe, but then there's this point where everything else is going to be based on experience. It's going to be based on what is happening internally through consciousness, and there really is no way for me to prove to you what I've experienced. I can only give you my experience of it, share it with you, and say, hey, you can try it yourself. Why don't I create a meditation for you, and you can try it, and then you can share with me if you experience something similar. What I found so fascinating is that so many people have done my meditations and then come to me and then told me about these miracles happening, objects disappearing. I just was talking to somebody today that claimed that they had done a quantum jump for healthing and for health, and suddenly the prescription that they had to get, they wanted to get off this drug, just disappeared. That was in their car. They knew it was there. They're driving to the pharmacy and it just disappeared. And then later on they were able to quit taking that prescription. And I know that thousands, not just a couple, thousands of people have reported similar and unusual circumstances. Now, obviously, some of those are memory. Some of those are people that, they don't quite remember what's going on. But a number of those are certainly valid and authentic. And it's enough to where you have to say something's going on. People are experiencing a multiverse that is real. And that's what I'm trying to share. That's part of it.
Yeah, it's one of the things that blows my mind as I start to approach this is there a certain scale potentially at the level of choice that you're making that opens up opens up a different, because the theory in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we have certain choices, and certain choices based on the decisions we make, a different possibility opens up and different timelines open up based on those choices. But then also at some point, I'm looking at a piece of toast kind of going butter, no butter. And I'm wondering, surely that mustn't be as important as it really is. Maybe it is the butterfly effect. I don't know. Your insights on that?
There is none that are less important than others, right? So you had made a point of it being important. Infinity is hard to fathom, but there is an infinite number of realities. Now, coming from a perspective, we've really done this a lot, and I've been able to look out and see the different realities. I've been in a space where I can see streams of light, kind of like in Marvel. I love in Marvel when on Loki they show the multiverse as sort of a branch, a tree branch. I've been able to see it, and the truth is that most people, no matter what decisions, they're sort of locked into the same reality. Most people are, there are some decisions that we make that really do branch off. And yes, making a choice between butter or jelly on your toast is probably not going to make a difference to the reality. It could be very slight, but sometimes there is the butterfly effect and one tiny little choice. What I like to do is be able to sense into a timeline that already exists and to move into it. And so those choices and the decision points are not as critical. It's more the timeline that I want. I want a timeline where these things are occurring, and I can sense into it, and I can shift my consciousness into that timeline. Now, what was the cause of that timeline? And no, it could have been all the way back when I chose bread or when I chose butter over jelly with my toast. But at the same time, the actual cause of the timeline is not critical. The timeline has merged with a number of choice points, and I do think that we're actually constantly existing within a group of timelines, if that makes sense. And a lot of that is we're bound by what we have in our past, by our identity, by our culture, and that sort of locks us into a timeline, and then that timeline branches off. But yeah, every single decision we make, every breath we take is pretty much shifting us into a different reality. Most of them similar.
Yeah. So in this particular point, I think it's worth highlighting following your work is you have a very different take on the law of attraction type sort of stuff, because The Secret has the law of attraction based in it. But I think that is kind of looking from this way, looking from your centralized, localized space, looking outwards, trying to draw stuff in and kind of I can visualize it so I can pull it in. But your worldview is somewhat it's already out there. I'm trying to draw myself into this other other reality, correct?
I agree with everything that they teach in the law of attraction. It's just the major difference. I mean, law of attraction works. Everything they say is true. The only difference is you're not attracting something that's coming to you. You're choosing that something that already exists, and it's not really attraction. You're shifting into something that already exists. So it's just a concept. The concept, people think that when they're attracting that new car, that the car is magically coming from somewhere and coming into their life, but actually you're just moving into alignment with a reality in which that car will exist within your reality. So it's there's a difference, you may know, between the masculine and feminine perspective when it comes to law of attraction and reality creation. And the masculine perspective, the place I'm coming from, at least at the beginning of my channel, is really, how does this work? I need to know. I need to know. I need to know the specifics of it. And so the masculine is like, I need to know how the car works. I need to know where everything plugs in, and I need to know. So if I'm going to create my reality, I need to know. But the feminine perspective is just sort of from the heart, and acceptance. It doesn't matter. I don't need it. Is it a parallel reality? Is it something else? So I'm coming from that masculine perspective to begin with, to where I need to know. And so it doesn't necessarily help me. The fact that I know that it's a parallel reality, all that matters is what works. And so, and I can even say, people can say, following my channel over time, that I still talk about those parallel reality things, but I'm also focusing just as much on the intelligence of the heart, on the power of just being, on the power of emotions. I mean, Neville Goddard was teaching the feeling is the secret. And so, that's part of what's happening when you're shifting into these realities, is that you're seeking out signals that are based on feelings and things like that. It is complicated and simple at the same time. There's so much to it. And I'm always fascinated by any little bit of knowledge or information that I get from anyone. There's some great law of attraction teachers out there, and oftentimes they're very correct.
Yeah, you mentioned Neville Goddard, and we're gonna dive in deeper into into some of that stuff a little bit later, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
You mentioned the grey space earlier, and it's really interesting because I think you and I both share this fascination of, you mentioned that we can't. There's a certain point where you know, and then you can't really know, and I think the sort of one of the favorite places, which I find yourself in and myself, is the double slit experiment, right? Where it's like things are particulate or things are wave, and it's actually all down to the consciousness that's observing what's going on, that all of a sudden now things are like, it shows up like this, it shows up like that, and it's like, whoa, it all depends on the observer, and this starts to get really interesting. And so this opens up into something that I find is a place, even though you're through your masculine approach, I find we end up in this place where the universe isn't locally real. When I come across your work. Yeah. So can you explain that briefly for people that are tuning in, or not so briefly? Take your time. It's like,
well, within the quantum space, there's not one reality. There's infinite realities. You can, and for you to fathom it, you can treat it like an information space. A lot of times when I explain it like that, people understand it better. It's that within that wave space, when it's unobserved, within that infinite void of possibility, before it's being observed, then when you bounce the basketball, all the different possibilities of the way that ball is going to bounce exist within that information space. And so within that space, when you can enter into it, and we can sometimes do it when we're daydreaming or meditating, you can actually remove the part of you that's observing, and then the part of you that's just being, and then you can still observe outside of observing and see the space, this void where all these possibilities exist. And at the same time, I also think this confirms the sort of simulation theory that the reality that we're in is very dreamlike, that it fits along the lines of being in a simulation, and that your reality bubble is different than mine, and that as we're observing, it's constant, it's shifting, and that each of us are moving around in these reality bubbles that are being defined by what we're observing and feeling and by our intention.
Hey there, Inspired Evolutionary. If you absolutely love this, well then here's a full conversation with this guest on the Inspired Evolution podcast. Check it out now.